So last time we advanced this to a point where I at least thought I was happy with this whole lower horn area, and we got a few more pieces screwed onto the body. However, during the edit of the last episode, when I did all that work, I did notice that actually, viewed from a different angle, this still doesn't necessarily look 100% right. I don't think it helps that this unpainted body reflects the light differently from a painted one. I think that's part of the problem, but I do also think there's still an issue that needs to be resolved here. And in the last episode, I kind of said that when I moved this pick guard back, all I was doing was putting it in the position it should have been in the first place. And when I said that, I fully believed it. However, having thought about it, it's not actually the case. Now, I have got quite a lot on at the moment. I'm very busy and I have been to bed several times since I did the work. So I'd completely forgotten that actually when I put this neck pocket in, I had to bring it back a few millimeters to accommodate the scale length onto the bridge where I wanted it without there being any unsightly gaps at the back of the tremolo route. And I think that is the reason for the problem, because if we kind of move that forward a little bit, everything starts to make a lot more sense around this horn, which basically means I've got to take a little bit more material out of here. I'm not going to dwell on that, but I have thought of a way that I can kind of measure this and mark it up to get me exactly where I need it. So I will be getting back to that in a little while, but first of all I want to just do a little bit of prep work on this body because frankly I need a little bit of a break from this. And the first thing I'm going to do is just once again get everything off the body that we screwed on last time. And then with everything off the body, I'm just going to get a very small countersink and I'm going to just put a chamfer on all of the little holes everywhere on the body, just to kind of relieve the edge on all these holes so that when I come to the finishing process, and in particular the flatting off of the lacquer, I haven't got a sharp edge there, because that's the kind of place where you're going to very easily burn through and make a mess of your painting. And I find these little, I mean they're really an engineering, metalworking countersink, but I find they work very, very well for this kind of stuff. And as you can see, I'm hardly taking anything off there. Realistically, all it's doing is just adding a bit of relief onto all of the holes. Okay, so all those holes are relieved now. So I think it's time I stopped procrastinating and started to actually get this horn issue sorted out. So I'm going to get rid of this for the time being. I'm going to get the red Stratocaster back and we'll start taking some meaningful measurements. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use this compass to kind of establish what's what, and if I set that up, it starts to pinch down a little bit here, but that is around about what we want all the way through that section, but it's much less here So it's around about that. So again, I'm probably going to have to do this in a couple of bites, but I'll put that one out of the way. Stick the scratch plate in the position it needs to be in. And I'm just going to use that measurement I just taken just to scribe that in. And I'll just set it up again for the lower horn area. And where I'm marking this is actually to the start of the radius. So underneath the horn there, we're actually pretty much where we need to be. But I think you can see here we're a good few millimeters away from where we need to be. So that indicates to me that we need to take a little bit more material out of this horn and just bring this bit down a little bit as well. And I would suggest, as we're using a 10mm radius, we need to come an extra 5mm from that line. So again, bit of bobbin sanding, bit of routing, and we should be good to go then. And I think with that last little bit, we've actually come basically where we need to be. I think there's a little bit of finishing off work to do around here, but ultimately I think that's probably going to do. And with that finally sorted, we can now get on with the rest of the finishing prep on this body. And the first bit I want to tackle is this little area on the back of the guitar around the neck plate. If you remember back when we put these roundovers on, we didn't actually do this little bit here because we weren't really sure where everything was going to sit, but we now know that our neck plate is sitting there, and that'll give us a good guide of what we need to do. And there isn't a huge amount really. We need to take a little bit out of here, and we just need to take a little bit out of there, and then just put the slightest of radiuses on that corner. And to do that, I'm going to start with a carving file. Just smooth that out a little bit. It's not going to take a lot. And then just finesse that with a 120 pad. And blend it all in. And with that sorted out, now turn it over, and we just need to do the same trick basically on the top. So with that all done, I'm going to say I'm happy with that now. There is still kind of a tiny little bit of inconsistency there, but I can get that out in the final sanding stages. So we can dispense with the pick guard for the time being and actually start with the finishing proper. Now, over the weeks, as this has been worked on and moved about and put down on the bench and everything, it has introduced some little dents and scratches, etc., to the wood, both on the front and on the back. There's nothing massively major, and I don't think there's anything I could actually pick up in the camera. But just to make sure that that's not a problem, I'm going to take the faithful clothes iron and just give this a little bit of an iron, just to try and make those indentations puff back out again, so that we can then sand everything down and make it lovely. And to that end, I'm just going to use a damp tea towel and put that over. And give that a quick iron. Now the secondary purpose of this is that it actually will raise the grain a little bit as well. So hopefully that will help us reduce the amount of grain filling that's needed. On this instance, it's not going to matter that much because, spoiler alert, it is going to be a solid colour. So it's going to have a base coat laid down, which will kind of take away the need for a grain filler to a certain extent. Now I can just see in here there are a couple of little dents, so I'll see if I can pull in a bit tighter on there and get those steamed out. And you might just be able to see there's a little bit of a dent there and a little bit of a dent there. I think that's where I've kind of been waggling the tremolo around a little bit. Just let that dry out. That one's gone, but there is still a little one there, so we'll give it that another go. Yep, I think that's got it. So I'll just repeat that process on the back and we'll be ready for some final sanding action. And there it is, all steamed. Now I have had comments in the past from people saying that introducing moisture into a body like this really isn't a good idea. To be honest, we're only putting a little bit of moisture right into the very outer layers of the wood. And as you can see, we're kind of watching this dry out in real time. It really hasn't penetrated very far at all, and it's drying very quickly. And additional to that, we're going to be sanding this, so a fair amount of the wood that has had that bit of moisture introduced into it will actually get sanded away, So I don't see it as being a problem. I think there's far more benefits to doing this than there are drawbacks. So next stage is to just leave this probably about an hour to fully dry out again, and then we can start doing a bit of sanding on it. So that's had slightly longer than an hour. It's in fact had the length of a football match, which ironically was very much like watching paint dry itself. So we're now ready to just get this sanded off. But to be honest, we've done most of the work already, and what we're going to achieve in this session is just to kind of knock that grain back that we raised with the water and deal with any kind of minor inconsistencies that there might be. And also there are a few areas where it kind of got a little bit scorched while we were machining it, so it will just be a case of getting those scorch marks off. It's less important on this one because it is going to be a solid colour, so we're not actually going to see any of this wood grain, but just for the sake of completeness I will get those sanded out. And I'm going to be doing most of it with the double action sander. I'm going to start with some 180 and then I'm going to go up to 240 and I'm going to leave it there. That is more than enough for this stage. Once we get to finishing this, it's going to have a solid white undercoat on, which will kind of help fill up any lumps and bumps, and then we can flat that out to a much finer grade of paper in preparation for getting the actual paint on. But for now we can leave it fairly rough. So that's actually come together really quickly, and I've done probably about 85% of it. I need to put a little bit of work into these roundovers and around the edge of the body, and I'm painfully aware that there's only so much sanding that you can watch. So I'm going to leave this episode here and carry on with this off camera. So I'll be back in a couple of days' time when we can finally get onto getting the neck prepared for finish, and also I think I'll take that opportunity to do some work on the frets and get those a little bit closer to where we need them. So until then, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already done so, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks a lot for watching. Bye bye.